My name is Jeremy Roberts, and my presentation today is The Path to Digital Transformation: Six Pillars to Long-Term Digital Transformation: People, Process, Technology, Data, Customers, and Culture. So, fundamental change and digital evolution at the enterprise business level are not common practice or recurring topics unless motivated by a threat to a company's microenvironment or the threat of a macro environment level catastrophe, like a global pandemic. And at this point, most companies are reactively fighting for survival and cautiously making change without disrupting the natural flow of business. However, this happens to be where failure starts as companies fail to holistically take on the digital transformation journey and proactively create long-term change. The purpose of this study is to review existing digital transformation methodologies and ascertain their successes and shortfalls. The study participants include business leaders from mid-market and large enterprises who work in marketing, IT, operations, change management, and strategy across various industries and company sizes. The participants will be at a director level or higher and hold a management role and have the authority to make business level changes within the company and affect change in at least six pillars: the people, process, technology, data, customers, and culture. This grounded theory study examines existing digital transformation methodologies across a variety of companies. So this qualitative design research, we use a triangulation of a case study and grounded theory methodology to conduct surveys and interviews, and then analyze the data from companies using different employee levels from various industries and company sizes. The result of this study will offer a new approach to the digital transformation journey based on these six pillars. And the results will also seek to determine how companies should approach their digital transformation journey, really to ensure a path to holistic change and towards long-term success. So even before the global pandemic, really decimated business growth, it curtailed the future of long-standing iconic business storefronts and forced companies to rethink their entire way of doing business. Digital evolution really just fortuned only those ready and willing to change and challenge those testing their fates, just as companies like Blockbuster, how they resisted change. And before COVID-19, many of these companies they really just couldn't justify it. They could not justify the change to their entire business function, their entire business model. And they did not see those signs that they had to start right away. So when you think about it, right, only 12.2% of Fortune 500 companies were really, let's say since 1955, are still around, even 60 years later. But from those companies that started in 1955, the remaining 88% have all either merged, went bankrupt, or have dramatically reduced in size and really just are no longer around. And many of these examples of companies that failed to innovate and did not make an effort to change, like Polaroid, Toys R Us, Borders, Kodak, Nokia, Yahoo, Hitachi, and so on. And many, did not see the need and proactively took the change, or that took the chance to take on this venture. And as they started in their process, they started to see signs that more change needed to happen. And today's literature is filled with companies that are not doing enough to maintain local digital transformation. So in a Forbes article in 2012, the author highlights two reasons why companies are resistant to change, especially in periods of opportunity where a company needs to be willing to adapt and make an actual change. The author cites that both structural inertia, where stability is rewarded, and the founder effect, where companies follow their heritage, it limits diversity. It's also as if they're still trying to dive into a new era while keeping one foot on the platform. And then in a blog post by Proficient in 2016, the company states that they are already recognizing a difference in how marketing is changing, how customers experience a brand, and how companies must evolve to really embrace that change. And some examples of this initiatives include prevalent use and engagement of content on mobile devices, or the emphasis of customers' experience on consumer feedback, or the need for technologies to integrate across the funnel, pushing systems to work at scale, and even creating personalized consumer experiences. So in the CIO.com interview with the director of digital transformation from Frost and Sullivan, Benoit CS, the publication is digging into why, even before the effects of COVID-19 changed everything, that there's a trend, an inevitable move towards digital transformation. And he talks about 4 key fundamental factors that are pushing the organization towards digital transformation. Number 1, he states, customers are becoming more sophisticated and expecting more. 2, consumer technology has influenced enterprise technology and changed the way technology is consumed. 3, the threat of new age competition and progressive business practices is forcing change. And 4, employees are stepping away from the traditional organization operations and really looking for a more sophisticated way of working. In Japan, looking beyond just a single firm or even just a series of companies, within an industry, many companies across the country saw clear signs that change needed to happen. And with an increased number of issues, the inevitable pressure towards digital transformation was really felt across the entire country by companies before even COVID-19. So the book, Why Japan's Digital Transformation is Inevitable, it discusses 6 sources of pressure to change that were felt across Japan. The 6 pressures include generational change, drop in the Japanese population, overseas partners, the growth of fintech, the preference to grow food locally in Japan, and finally, the impatience of Japan's new generation with really just conventional labor services. But in the end, COVID-19 has widely been blamed for the acceleration of digital transformation in companies. Summer 2020 survey of 2,569 enterprise decision makers stated that 97% of executives said that the pandemic sped up their digital transformation efforts. And according to Forbes, the unfortunate results of COVID-19 acceleration not only sped up the need for companies to more quickly adopt a digital practice, but 95% of decision makers said that they're now looking for new ways to engage their customers in comparison. In comparison, right, 79% stated that COVID-19 increases their budget for digital transformation. So then what is this practice? What is the practice of digital transformation? So digital transformation is much more than changing a few processes, hiring a few people, acquiring these new technologies and so on to automate your business. But it does a lot more than that. It incorporates this change in a company culture. It changes the way you look and manage and make decisions based on data and how to engage with your customers. In this fundamental transformation, it's not a short-term change, and many lose sight of that. Enough to last. This is enough to last until company goals change or when leadership is hired. And sadly, a holistic approach is not shared with most organizations and entities that falsely see digital transformation as really just a simplified process that can be done with a simplified checklist. So CIO.com highlights a necessary disruption that is generally viewed as modern aggregating tools, solving new business problems and satisfying customers. So the article continues by defining it as radical thinking, or how organizations use people, process, and technology to change the outcomes and business performance. And in this article, an article in Chief Learning Officer, it further elevates this truncated view of change, right? It explains that the speed of technological advances will change and influence a customer's expectations and force a digital transformation at a company. And the article states that these technologies interact with processes and people, and that this concept is the apparent path forward, but may be different for every company. And furthermore, so economictimes.com takes a different approach, but it still falls short with this limited approach to the needed change. They highlight the planned change that supports the emergence of new technologies, but they say that the focus should still be on two essential tools to make the unforeseen best decision, right? And so this article states that using a binary approach to drive decisions makes the path to digital transformation possible. They say that if a company chooses a path of either one, flexibility, or two, control, then digital transformation can best move forward once planned technology is in place. For me, after 15 years of watching companies resist change, complain about the evolving business landscape, but never act, try to take the leap, but resort back to the status quo when there's resistance, or invest in change, but only take one step at a time, there must be a solution that supports not only holistic change, but also creates change for the business in the long term. And existing literature and 15 years of active participation in the digital evolution have uncovered 6 pillars of focus that drive long-term digital transformation for companies. But all 6 must work together to sustain long-term success. Adversely, a partial change of anything less than all 6 pillars will result in short-term adjustment and the likelihood that the company will revert back to actual practice. So long-term change is only achievable when a company transforms holistically and not in pieces. It's all or nothing. And digital transformation is a holistic practice that changes the way people think, approach a problem, gather information, interpret data, the way they execute initiatives, the way they manage people, and the way they engage with customers. And that long-term digital transformation results from mutualistic ecosystem made up of 6 pillars: people, process, technology, data, customers, and culture. This qualitative research project will provide an overview of the current state, the challenge, tipping point, and action companies are taking on their path towards digital transformation. It will propose a conceptual framework for recognizing a company's pathway to holistic change and its step towards to decide how to move forward. So in the statement of the problem, we recognize that current literature really does fall short of providing companies with a valid path to digital transformation success, and it really does fail to identify a practical approach in the long term. And there's this gap in the existing literature that was mentioned earlier in the presentation that offers really only a functional solution. And at the end of the day, it only supports a short-term success. So existing literature takes on a limited and functional approach for companies seeking digital transformation, and mostly offers a checklist-style method to solve their foundational problems. A checklist-style approach is not a viable solution and has yet to prove that it is effective long-term. Using a cookie-cutter methodology across industries and with companies at varying digitization stages, all is already really just a recipe for failure. The results given in existing literature may showcase success with their given methodologies. However, it only takes a snapshot of the resulting change just after the final implementation and fails to track the progress over the next months and years. It's also well known that no matter how much progress a company has made to transform themselves, as soon as their budgets change, markets react unfavorably, or there's a disruption in leadership, and most companies, will sadly abandon their progress and begin re-implementing old ways because they knew at some point that's what worked. And most literature will support a digital transformation approach that only looks at 3 things: people, process, and technology. but this neglects the change needed to support the most vital elements of the company. It's really just a piece of the puzzle and not the whole puzzle itself. It is fair to say that this method produces a healthy workforce, right? A well-oiled operation and really strong technological capabilities. But however, this limited approach neglects the foundational elements that make people, process, and technology possible. Companies should holistically look at data, customers, and culture alongside people, process, and technology, together with all the 6 elements as the central focus of any digital transformation effort. A company will find long-term success in their digital transformation journey. So as we now start to get into the purpose of the study is really to review existing digital transformation methodologies, and we're going to look across various industries, company sizes, locations, how many years in business they've been in, absolutely employee size, and also whether they're in a current stage of their digital transformation. And then we're going to identify what are the successes and really what are their shortfalls. And the result of this study, what it's going to do is it's going to offer a new approach to digital transformation journey. It's going to offer a framework based on the 6 pillars: the people, process, technology, data, customers, and culture. And this new approach is going to provide companies with a holistic 6-part methodology that details each of the 6 pillars and how companies can use these in the 6-pillar method to drive long-term change. So this comprehensive plan is going to offer 4 different things. So a detailed understanding of each of the 6 pillars and their purpose, an internal survey to identify opportunities and shortcomings to set up an approach for each of the 6 pillars. And then from that, it's going to have a methodology to identify areas of opportunity for each of the 6 pillars. And then finally, a sustainability plan to support digital transformation for the long term. And then what that does is allow us to really identify what is our research question. And the long-term success path to digital transformation requires a company to proactively focus on a methodology that explores 6 pillars within a company that help drive a successful journey. And this journey is met with multiple questions that will discover their current digital state, their challenges, the tipping point to consider digital transformation journey, and the company's action towards digital transformation. And that research question is simply, how should companies approach their digital transformation journey to ensure a path to holistic change and toward long-term success? So this qualitative design research is going to use a triangulation of a case study and grounded theory methodology to conduct both surveys and interviews, and then analyze the data from companies using different levels of employees from various industries and company sizes. So 3 triangulation methods will be used to establish the study's validity using these 3 methods. So the first one, data triangulation, then theory triangulation, and then methodological triangulation. So data triangulation, we're going to use that to source data from various stakeholders within the company. Theory triangulation is going to help bring different perspectives from professionals in various disciplines. And then the methodological triangulation is there to support both case study and grounded theory methodology. And this case study is going to address interviews, it'll gather documentation and support the survey's administration to the study's population. And grounded theory will be used for analysis and to confirm research questions. So as we start to get into the methodology, the qualitative research study will provide an overview of the current state, the challenge, the tipping points, and actions the companies are going to take on their path forward towards digital transformation. And it can provide a conceptual framework for recognizing a company's pathway to holistic change and its steps to decide to move forward. So current literature and active experience in digital transformation activities are really a large part of the research's genesis to support the methodology and approach towards this qualitative research study. So current literature and real-world examples or experience also help to identify the study's survey questions in support of the hypothesis in the proposed conceptual framework. The study's participant poll is a population of business leaders who work in marketing, IT, operations, change management, and/or strategy, and across various industries and company sizes. The participant poll will be a population of business leaders who represent both mid-market and large enterprises. So mid-market companies are defined as small and medium enterprises. They typically have between 100 to 500 employees with annual revenues of $10 million to $1 billion. Large enterprises will often have over 1,000 employees and an annual revenue above $1 billion. So this study is going to seek out individuals within a company, within these select companies or this range, that hold a variety of roles. And these individuals will be at a director level or higher and hold a management role. And the study population will look for leaders in executive level positions and senior leaders who have the authority to make business level changes within the company and affect change in at least all the 6 pillars: the people, process, technology, data, customers, and culture. So if they have that ability to manipulate or change or make a big move based on one of the 6 pillars, they will be qualified for the study. So before each survey is going to be given out to an in-person interview, informed consent to collect data and record sessions will be obtained from all the participants. If consent is not obtained, then that participant will be removed from the study. All data collected from the study and the identities of the study participants will be secured and will not be made available to the public. However, if a participant and their employing company are willing to offer reference quotes, then consent will need to be obtained and verified before public use. So surveys will be distributed online via a research portal, followed by an in-person interview to review the survey questions and dig deeper into topics specific to the questions how the questions are answered. In each of the in-person interviews, they'll be recorded for the study to be later reviewed. And further information can be then extracted and verified during the analysis process from the recordings. And because of public safety measures, in-person interviews will ideally happen via a recorded conference, and interviews will range in length from 60 minutes to 90 minutes, depending on the respondent's level of conversation and their level of participation in the study. So once the data is collected and analyzed, the data coding will now involve 3 phases: open coding, axial coding, and selective coding. In addition to the 3 coding phases, 3 forms of triangulation will be used, right? As we mentioned before, the data, theory, and methodological triangulation. And those will all be used to increase the credibility of the findings of the study, to diminish any researcher's bias in the data, and to eliminate any chance of misinterpretation when verifying the data sources and the given perspectives. So in phase 1, using open coding, all the surveys and transcripts will be put into memos and open coded with all collected data to develop preliminary categories in the initial codebook. So this data includes survey questions and recorded in-person interviews. In phase 2, then the actual coding will be used to relate categories and subcategories of data to reveal linkages. And in phase 3, finally, the selective coding will be used to identify the core categories and the overarching connection between the rest of the data. And finally, after the axial and selective coding, the story behind the data will marry with the research question hypothesis. And the study's empirical data will support the research question and hypothesis that long-term digital transformation success is only achievable when all 6 pillars are utilized to support the holistic change. Also, the triangulation, the data, theory, and methodological, alongside the coding phases, open, axial, and selective, is a way of then assuring the validity of the research using various methods to collect data and to capture different dimensions of the same perspective. So the research study results look to identify commonalities and patterns of shortfall where companies either reactively or proactively approach their digital transformation journey. It's going to be expected that no matter the size of the enterprise or the industry, that these companies will all have everyday internal struggles and external factors that are forcing they're forcing them to make a decision on a fundamental change in their business operations. And these results are expected due to multiple factors. And here we have 5 factors that we've identified. And I'll read these out for you. So the first one is that current literature tells us that companies are really focused on change, but they haven't really made those efforts. The efforts that will be effective really in the long term. They've done some band-aid changes, but nothing really to go along forward. 2, current literature tells us there are too many methodologies out there across mid-sized companies. From the literature that we found, there's just too many different approaches, and there's no methodology behind it. And most are really built on a limited success structure, right? And these structures are really looking at a reactive action to a current problem, and they're not looking at a proactive strategy that supports long-term success. And like mentioned in number 1, these enterprises affected by this microenvironment or macro environment factors are reactively putting band-aids on broken systems, or they're just temporarily making changes, assuming that they can quickly revert to status quo post-problem. Number 4, they're still afraid. Many of these enterprises are still afraid to make a holistic change, and are actively trying to take a step forward without really taking their foot off the ground. So they're trying to do what they can. There's a lot of conversation around that, but there really has been no action yet. And then finally, user personal experience in digital transformation has demonstrated how common it is that most companies do not have the knowledge, the experience, or even the expertise to approach and manage a digital transformation journey. And many times what we find out is that most of them who have made the leap realize they can't do this themselves. So they're really seeking out a consultative support or the guidance of third-party surveys or services. So now we're going to get into the survey questions and quickly highlight the different survey questions that we're going to be using. So this survey that's going to be sent out actually includes 15 questions. They're going to be used to really open up the conversation and allow for that in-person interview to be able to really thrive using how they respond to these questions. So think of it as more as discovery questions as the survey is put out. So this survey is going to measure how effective or ineffective each company's digital transformation efforts are in the short term and long term. And as we mentioned, following the survey, respondents will participate in an in-person interview to review the questions that they answered and dig deeper into the topics to how they were answered. So question number 1 is, before COVID-19, in March 2020, was your company looking to evolve its digital practice and accommodate the changing digital environment? If yes, elaborate on that. If no, let's just go to question 2. Question 2 is, since the COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2020, when did your company identify the need to transform digitally? And if so, who identified this need and who initiated the effort? 3, so what is your business's current state in today's digital environment? How would you rate your digital maturity level on a scale of 1 to 10, and with 1 being the lowest and 2 being a very digitally mature company as an industry leader? Number 4, were there any macro external indicators that are telling you or your company that transformation change or transformative change needs to happen? And if so, what are some of the examples that you can reference? Number 5, on the other side of that, what micro or internal indicators are telling your company that, hey, it's time for a transformative change, transformative change? And do you have any examples that you can reference there? So then moving over into that change, question number 6 is, did your company experience any compelling events or any kind of tipping point causing that business to make a fundamental change or actions towards digital transformation in that journey? And if so, Was there a specific team or a group or a person that identified this, and who initiated that effort? And if possible, could you tell me what were the multiple factors, or what was that tipping point that made all that happen? Number 7, what actions are you taking, or will you take, or your company, to evolve your people or your staff to support a digital transformation environment? Who's going to be involved? What roles are they going to play in this effort? Is it HR? Is it marketing? Is it IT? Who is it? And are you looking to train internally? Are you going to possibly then replace existing staffing? Or are you going to build, or are you going to hire more? And then finally, number 8, what actions are you going to take, or will you take, to evolve your internal business processes, right? We talked earlier about the fact that companies fall into the idea that we've always done it this way, right? So how are you going to evolve your business practices to support a digital transforming environment? Who's going to be involved, and what roles will they play? Question number 9, how is your business currently structured? And is this model conducive to your company's changing needs and environment? Is it a divisional company? Is there a center of excellence that connects the different divisions? How is that communication happen? If so, if not, so why? If not, what needs to change and how? Number 10, so when you look at the actions, what actions are your company or you or your team taking to audit, either modify or replace your current technology stack to support any type of digital transformation efforts or that environment? And is your current stack supportive of your business needs? Does it align to your business needs and your goals? What are the challenges for there? If so, how? If not, what needs to change to support that? So what actions are you or your company taking to best manage, interpret, and activate data in a digital transforming environment? How is that data currently structured and used to make data-driven decisions? Is there a current model? Is this a current model ideal? Is it practical? If not, what needs to change? And then finally, right there, what actions, for number 12, what actions are you or your company taking to evolve the way you engage with your customers in this new environment? Is this a useful method? If so, how? If not, what needs to change to support that? And then with customers, how have your customers' needs changed over the last few years? What's causing them to change? How do you feel this affects you and your company today over the next 3 to 5 years? And then moving on from customers, what actions are you taking to evolve your company's culture, really to support this new digital transforming environment, right? How does your company maintain its cultural integrity, but also support this fundamental evolution, this change that's going to happen, that's really going to affect everybody, every employee, processes, your customers, and just the way everything happens? And then finally, the last question of the survey is, what actions are your company taking to accommodate a changing digital environment specific to the 6 pillars? So that is a review of the entire research proposal, along with the references that are available for you to be able to look at. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask. If not, thank you for your time and have a great day. Thank you.